Now, I can already tell this episode's going to run long, but I don't want to... I want to keep pretty much everything I just talked about in, because I think that personal green bean story does lead into our next story. And that is... Well, I guess it doesn't really, but it's a personal story. So this wasn't originally the topic for today, because something happened this morning. Now, last night when I was going... People ask me, hey, did you hear about this political thing that was going on? Or, did you hear about... And I was like, listen, if it doesn't involve Bigfoot, aliens, or ghosts, I don't know about it. I haven't had time to read, in-depth articles on politics or society or culture in months. I'll scan the news to keep a little bit updated, but when anyone wants, a deep dive into something, I'm like, dude, really, unless Donald Trump got abducted by aliens, I'm really not aware of really what's going on right now. All my time is spent researching this stuff and watching Ohm Wrecker play Dead by Daylight on YouTube. That's my one guilty pleasure. So last night before I went to bed, I was researching all last night, and the last night before I went to bed, I got my book, The National Directory of Haunted Places. I've talked about it a ton of times. I love the book a lot. I'd say 90% of my ghost stories come from that book. Really recommend picking it up. It's a big book. But I thought, you know what? Before I go to bed, I'm going to read. I can't even lay in bed and relax. Before I go to bed, I'm going to lay in bed. And I'm going to read my National Directory of Haunted Places. And I highlight stories that then I have to do further research on. See if there's anything behind it. So I grab my book and I start reading it. And it's all stories about people walking through walls and ghosts climbing into beds. And it's 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be reading this right now. This is kind of creepy. And I have a giant stick. So when I lay in bed, I can just hit my outlet a couple times and it shuts my light off. But I'm reading this book and I'm making little X's next to the stories I want to cover. And I was laying there and I thought, it's so funny because I'm reading all of these experiences. And I go, and I believe in ghosts in a sense, but where are they? Really, there should be ghosts everywhere. Where are they? And then I got a little more creeped out. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put the book. I'm just stop reading the book. I put the little bookmark in. Toss the book to the side of the bed. Shut the light off, turn on my phone. Did some more research that wasn't going to scare me before I went to bed. I go to work. I come home. And I have to use the bathroom. And I go, oh, you know what? I need to do some more research. I can't even relax in the bathroom. I was like, oh, I need to do some more research when I'm in the bathroom. Where's my book? And I go to find it. Gone. Now, this isn't a small book. It's about the size of a human head. Not as thick, but it's not a paperback. It's not one of those lame little paperbacks. It's a trade paperback. It's a big, thick book. It's about as wide and tall as a human head. It's probably 400 pages. And I look over to where I put it, and it's gone. And I go, oh, well, it must have fallen behind the bed. And I start to replay in my mind exactly where I put the book. And I was like, I know I didn't get out of bed because I hit the outlet with the stick a bunch of times. So I go, oh, it must have been here. And I look, it's not there. I'm like, this is kind of a big book to just disappear. And at this point, I'm thinking, when I was reading the book, I remember thinking, why aren't there any ghosts around? And I'm going to get into where there's ghosts around, but not the type of ghosts that I read about in the book. I'm thinking, because in the book, there's always plates being tossed around and dolls moving and creepy stuff like that. And so I go, it must be under this. Now, my bedroom is messy, but it's not lose the human-sized head book messy. It's really not that messy. I have a bunch of clothes all over the place, and I'm looking around and I go, well, maybe it's under this. Maybe it's under this. I'm digging. Now, again, reminder, I have to go to the bathroom. I really have to go to the bathroom. And I'm feverishly digging for this book. At this point, I don't really necessarily need it to read. I need to prove to myself that the book is here. Can't find it. So I just go to the bathroom. I'm like, whatever, I don't have the book. And it's funny because I was sitting in the bathroom and I thought, I should ask the ghost if he took my book to give it back. And I kind of said it as a joke, and I was like, of course it doesn't work because that's not the way ghost stuff works. I'm some sort of expert, but you know what I mean? I was just like, eh. And so I come out, and at this point, before I went to the bathroom, I spent 15, 20 minutes looking for the book, and I had lifted everything up off the floor in that area, looked behind the bed, looked in play. I was thinking maybe I threw the book. I was trying to play back in my mind. I was like, yeah, I remember turning over and setting the book down on a pile of clothes, and I grabbing my phone and hitting the light switch. I remember that sequence of events. So where is the book now? But when I was in the bathroom, I was thinking, oh, maybe I should ask it. I come out of the bathroom, and I'm thinking, it would be crazy if the book was on the ground. And it wasn't. But for whatever reason, when I come out of the bathroom, I kind of look on the ground, I don't see anything, kind of chuckle to myself. I turn to my left, and you're going to laugh at the first part of this. I turn to my left where I have a big bookcase full of maybe, 50 books. And I'm going, is it on the bookcase? And it was. It was on the bookcase facing against the wall, so I could only see the pages, not the spine. Now, the rational part of my mind goes, okay, and I grabbed the book, and I took it out to the living room and started reading it. I go, the rational part of my mind is this. I must have, at some point, either woken up in the middle of the night, slept walk, picked the book up off the pile of clothes, and put it in the library, facing the wrong way. Or, when I woke up in the morning to get ready for work, it was in my way, and then I picked it up and put it in the library. That's the rational explanation. I do, to debunk, to argue with that, it could have been in my way, but so were the 3 big piles of clothes would have been in my way, because there's a bunch of clothes there. So why would I have picked the book up and put it in the library? But for whatever reason, it ended up there. And the most likely explanation is, I did it. I've talked about on past episodes that my apartment's haunted, and I kind of said, I'll talk about it later. And when this happened this morning, I thought, now's a great time to talk about this. Now's a great time to talk about this story. When I moved into this apartment, it's a beautiful apartment. This place was probably built back in the 1950s. So it's tiny little kitchen, tiny little bedroom, tiny little living room, but it's perfect for a bachelor. And it was great. And I remember when I moved in here, there was obviously no furniture or anything. There was just a fridge and oven and stuff like that. And the closet door has a padlock on the outside. Now, I've never seen a closet door with a lock on the outside. And to be fair, I don't think I've ever really seen a closet door with a lock. But it seemed odd that the closet is made to basically lock something into it. And I thought, again, rational, maybe the door is loose, and maybe if you don't lock it, the door is always kind of a little open, and it's kind of creepy. That's not the case, but that was one of my first night. I thought, well, that's weird. Why would there be a lock on the outside of it? Not a padlock, but it's a little like slide lock on the outside of this closet. And the first night I slept on the floor, and I just kind of was like, oh, this is an awesome place. Like, this place is for me. It wasn't long after my first night. It may have honestly been the second or third night after I had actually moved in. Like, was beginning to move my stuff in. And I never saw anything at first. But I felt there was the presence in my closet. And I could describe that. It was almost like a visual image that just kind of popped into my head. Could be my imagination. Could have been a waking dream. But I got the image of a elderly man, emaciated elderly man, wearing nothing but underwear in my closet. Now, of course, I used the padlock on my closet, but I just had this horrible vision of this elderly man wearing nothing but underwear standing in my closet. For a long time, I didn't even sleep in my bedroom because it was really creepy. Now, but even when I did, I kept that thing locked. There is a shop in Hood River called Sparkling Creations. They sell a lot of gems and rocks and healing crystals and stuff like that. They also sell sage, which is a thing that you can burn, and it's called smudging. You basically smudge a location, and you can purify it, and it basically, in mystical terms, I mean, there's nothing scientific about this, but you can create a barrier from anything getting in. Basically is a healing thing. And I went down there to buy some, and it's funny because I've talked about how creepy Hood River is in general. No one ever really likes to talk about it, but it's just kind of the town seems a little off. And I go in there to buy it, and I ended up becoming good friends with a bunch of people who worked there, but at the time I was just a new guy, and I went in there to buy some sage. And they said, oh, yeah, good thing, because we sell out so quickly. You're actually buying the last one. And I remember coming back later, and they're like, oh, no, we're totally out of sage. Like, something they order and just a ton of people buy. They can't keep it in stock. So I get this sage. I've never smudged before, but I've known about the practice, and I went and did some research online, and they were talking about how to do it and things like that. I was like, oh, okay, it seems pretty easy. But I had a problem with saging my house. Now, moving up to Hood River, I had always, especially when I was younger, I was constantly having interactions with ghosts or demonic activity or whatever it was. And so I've been fairly keeping a low profile for a while, not reading that stuff. I'm doing it now, and that goes into another story we're going to talk about. Yeah, this episode's going to run long. But I remember thinking, okay, if smudging works, if I'm basically smudging my house and I create a barrier around it, and if you are this sounds completely ridiculous, but just go with me on this. Let's say I smudge my house and I create a mystical barrier around it that nothing can get in. And let's say you are a spirit, a dark spirit wandering through the world. And you see this house here and that house there and this house here. And then you see a small little apartment with a glowing seal around it. This dark spirit could say, something special's in there. It'd be the equivalent of if you have a safe in your house, people go, oh, you must have some important documents or cash or other things in there. You could have those same things just in a drawer and no one would ever know they were there. But once they see your safe, they go, interesting. It's a pretty big safe. Why do you have a safe that big? Oh, yeah, I don't know. I just thought maybe I shouldn't smudge. That was kind of the thought that was going through my head. Maybe I shouldn't smudge. Maybe it would basically be sending a beacon out saying, hey, don't come in my house. But every time I leave my house, something's like, oh yeah, come after me. Is that fanciful thinking? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything realistic about that chain of logic? No. But it did keep me from smudging. I guess it's logical to me because I believe in ghosts, but you know what I mean? I don't let them go, oh, don't eat donuts. And I'm like, better not eat this donut. There are certain areas where I'll be like, oh, maybe this will have some sort of ramification. But I didn't smudge. But I still had this feeling that this thing was in my closet. And people would be like, why don't you try communicating with it? And I'm like, hell no, dude. It's creepy. Just going to ignore it. Hopefully it ignores me. But if for whatever reason, maybe about 7-8 months after I had bought the sage, I thought, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to sage my house. I'm going to do it. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything. I'm going to sage it. Maybe I'm wrong about it sending off some sort of beacon. Maybe that's just, I've never heard of that in literature before. So I'm just going to do it. I will sage my house tomorrow. But I was sleeping out on my couch. I wasn't sleeping in my living room. That night, I woke up in the middle of the night. Again, any rational person will think I was dreaming. Even I think I was most likely dreaming. But I woke up in the middle of the night, sitting in my living room, laying on my couch in my living room. And the way my living room's set up is there's 2 doors. There's one that leads into the bedroom, which I keep closed when I'm in here. And then there's a door frame that leads into the kitchen, and there's not a door there, so it's just a doorway. And I woke up, and in the doorway of the kitchen was the old man. He was wearing clothes. And he stood there and he kind of leaned against the door frame with on his elbow, and his hand was kind of behind his head. He was just kind of leaning casually, and he goes, I'm sorry I scared you. That wasn't my intent. Please don't sage this apartment. Disappeared. I still have the sage. I never used it. I thought that was interesting. Was it all possibly in my head? Yes. Was the old man in the closet possibly in my head? Yes. I still keep the closet door locked when I sleep in there. But I thought that was just a really interesting chain of events. But that's not the only haunting I've had in my apartment. And that's why, in this same apartment, and that's why I think this episode's going to run a little long. Hope you guys don't mind. But I figured I'd rather just get it all in now than kind of spread it out over episodes just to keep the continuity of it, because there's different time shifts. So that happened when I first moved in here. And again, I keep the closet door locked. Sometimes I fall asleep and the closet door is open and I don't see creepy hands reaching out of the closet in the darkness. It's just an open closet. Sometimes I just pass out because I'm so tired. Now, probably about 2 or 3 years ago. And I know that's kind of iffy, but my friend Lana could verify this because she was here for the after effect. But fairly recently, more recent than all of the Sage stuff, I'm a big movie watcher. When I'm not watching YouTube videos of Dead by Daylight gameplay, when I'm not reading, a lot of times, especially after I'm done, like as episodes are uploading to YouTube, I'll throw in a movie, watch maybe 10, 15 minutes of it, move to the next movie, until I find something I really like. So I came across this movie called Asmodexia. Don't know what it means. Don't really want to know what it means. It was a Spanish horror movie about a grandfather and his granddaughter who were trying to kill the Antichrist. The devil had impregnated a woman, and they were trying to kill the child before it destroyed the planet. And it was interesting because there's basically, if I remember correctly, I didn't watch a lot of it, and it's been a while. There's basically 3 parallel stories. There was the grandfather and granddaughter, and I think it starts off with them killing a baby, killing a mother and a baby. We have a reporter who's going undercover into a mental asylum to expose the bad stuff that's going on there. And then you had a mentally insane woman who claimed she was raped by the devil. And I remember the most interesting part of the movie, narratively, was the devil was saying, it was this handsome young man, he goes, they're trying to kill my child, but what they don't know is I've impregnated like 600 women. They can never stop this. They think they're trying to hunt down the one true. They think they already beat me because they killed that one woman I impregnated. I'm just impregnating hundreds of them. They can't stop me. And it was a really intriguing movie, and I wanted to finish watching it. But what happened was, I'm sitting there watching it. I'm still in my living room, and I hear probably about 10 feet away from me, I had a table set up, and I had some stuff on the table and some stuff on the ground. My living room tends to be a little more clean than my bedroom. I'm watching this movie and I'm like, man, this movie is really good. But it was really creepy. There was something about the movie that was just kind of really creepy to me. And I'm watching it. It's probably like 4 in the afternoon. I hear this BAM! Now, I can't make the noise loud enough on the podcast, but it was the equivalent of someone dropping 60 pounds of bricks on the ground. It was this massive noise. And I immediately turned to my left, and I'm thinking a computer fell over, or the table collapsed, or maybe not 60 pounds, but it sounded like 60 pounds would put a hole through the floor. It was loud enough that I thought something huge happened over there. And so I turn and I look, and everything's on the table, nothing's on the ground. And I'm thinking, okay, it could just have fallen, and I'm not seeing it, and I'm just staring over there in that corner, and there is nothing heavy on the ground at all. A couple pieces of clothing. And I remember just staring over at that area, and I'm thinking, what the hell? It didn't come from outside. It came from, I'd say 5 feet away from me, now that I'm looking over there. I'd say about 5 feet, because I recorded in my living room. About 5 feet from where I'm sitting right now, I heard that huge noise. And the movie's still playing, and I'm thinking, it was weird. Something in me said, shut the movie off, dude. Just shut the movie off. And I was like, nah, that's just a coincidence, man. It must just be like somebody must have dropped something. Someone maybe threw something downstairs. Maybe it did come from outside. It has nothing to do with the movie, but something was telling me, shut the movie off, man. This movie's way too creepy. I watched maybe 5 more minutes of the movie. Now, it was, like I said, about 4 in the afternoon, but my ceiling light was on. And the light goes, doo. Doesn't make that noise. But it burns out. But not in that psh, where it burns out. It goes from being fully lit, and there was a slight noise, and then it just slowly faded out. And I got up and I shut the movie off. I was like, I'm done with this movie. Done with this movie. I remember then, to wrap that story up, my ceiling's too high for me to reach anything. I don't have a ladder, so I had Lana come over, and I was like, hey, can you help me change my light bulb? Because she's tiny, but she could climb on the furniture. I couldn't climb on any of my furniture. I was like Shrek back then. I was like 350. I would have smashed anything I stood on top of. So we moved the chair around, and she gets up on the chair, and I'm looking up right at the bulb, and she kind of is looking down, because she's smarter than I am. She simply touches the light bulb, and I'm looking right at it. It turns to dust. Just completely, It was one of those CFL bulbs, like the little wire ones. So I don't know if that's how those bulbs normally burn out. I'm pretty sure they don't die like that. And I'm almost 100% sure they don't turn to dust when you touch them. Was all of that connected to that creepy movie I was watching in an apartment that is possibly haunted? The skeptical side of me says it's a series of coincidences. You were moving into a new place, so you imagined this force in your place, and then when you started to feel more welcome in your house, this made-up imaginary thing welcomed you into the house. That the noise that I heard may have even been connected to the reason why the light went out. I could have been watching Teletubbies and the same sequence of events could have happened. The noise was most likely not a hallucination, but was a noise emanating from somewhere else. And the light bulb was just timing. The book missing. Books, people move stuff around all the time. You're not known to sleepwalk, but, people do weird stuff in their sleep. You may have woken up and half awake, stepped on the book, picked it up, moved it. These are rational explanations for this stuff. And this last story I'm going to finish with has a rational explanation as well. But it goes back to what I was saying, that when I was younger and I read more about ghosts and stuff like that, I felt like I had more paranormal activity in my life. And then in my mid-20s to mid-30s, I was more focused on music and wasn't reading so much ghost stuff. But then I started doing this podcast. This probably would have started happening around late October. It's hard for me to put a time on it because it just simply started. But I'd been doing the podcast at that point for a couple months. I was stressed out about stuff. Not necessarily podcast stuff, just life in general. Not so stressed out that I was like freaking out, but just general stress. And I was sitting in my recliner, which is where I record my podcast, which is where I go home to relax. And on the couch, again, this is one of those things that I can't say that I exactly looked over and saw this thing. I more felt it to a point that I could perfectly describe it to you. So it's like seeing it without seeing it with your eyes. Which again, a skeptic would say, that's what imagination is. I'm sitting in my recliner. And for whatever reason, I turn to my left. Something impels me to turn to my left. There is a purple man sitting on my couch. Now, not purple in the sense that he looks like a Care Bear. He's purple because it's a corpse who apparently has been strangled. Now, what's weird is that there wasn't anything like a big rope around its neck, or it was like, oh. I just had this feeling that there was a very, very obese, bald man whose skin was mottled because he was dead for so long and the blood was pooling under his skin, sitting on my couch. I didn't see it. I never looked over and actually saw it, but I sensed it, I guess is a better word for it. I sensed this presence. It never moved. Well, it moved, like it wasn't there all day long. I wasn't like coming home from work and sometimes he'd be there, sometimes he wouldn't. More likely than not, he wouldn't be there. But sometimes he'd be over sitting on my couch. I wouldn't see it, wasn't a hallucination, I just had this sense of it. When I first had that sense, it really, really like startled me. Obviously. And I thought, maybe it's because I'm now reading all these ghost stories and really looking into this paranormal stuff again. I'm able to see this stuff better. I think the most likely answer for that one is the stress I was going through. Because I've been doing this show for a couple months, but it can get a little stressful, but not overly stressful. But that daily schedule, on top of other life stressors, was actually stressing me out to the point where my mind was just letting off a little bit of steam. And that was the result of it. Was because I was already feeling uncomfortable with what was going on with all these changes in my life, good and bad, that I was creating this image to represent that. So, obviously the other option is that I was looking at a dead man, of a ghost. The interesting thing about ghosts in particular, because sometimes you have it in Bigfoot and sometimes you have it in UFOs. But the most interesting thing about ghosts to me is that they almost always do things that can happen naturally. you will have people say, oh no, I had this bookshelf and it tipped over. Or I heard this loud noise in my room and a couple minutes later a light bulb burned out. Those things happen naturally. Doors opening, lights shutting off, faucets leaking water, moans in a house. These are all things that, void of any paranormal explanation, houses will settle, electricity will go out, faucets will be faulty. You never walk into a room and your refrigerator is hanging upside down. You may go, sometimes my refrigerator works, sometimes it doesn't, it might be a ghost, but it's almost always stuff that can be explained. There are a few cases where people have run up walls or heads have twisted around or stuff that bones have broken in odd angles. And I guess all those could probably be explained as well, except for the head twisting around. But, you can run up a wall and stuff like that. The UFOs generally are like, it's a light in the sky or it's an alien aircraft. It could be one of those. Bigfoot, it's either Bigfoot or another sort of animal. But when you talk about ghosts, they're so varied. Sometimes it's a floating head down the hallway. Sometimes it's voices. Sometimes it's a sensation of being choked. Sometimes it's an old man in the closet. Purple man on your couch. Noises and light bulbs going out. But they still all are things that can easily be explained. And that's always the question for me with ghosts. Everything that I explain to you very likely has a rational explanation. Very, very likely, I was stressed out. I moved into a new place. I was watching a movie that was already creepy, and there was 2 coincidences that happened. And I woke up at some point and moved that book to the bookcase, which is where a book should be in the first place. Those all have very rational explanations. But even with those rational explanations, I think I'm probably going to sleep with a light on tonight. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.